I'm gonna quiz them in an order. And first up is Kev Rowe, or Kevin Rowe, but we call him Kev. Kevin Rowe. He's the digital business partner at Croydon Borough Council. And I think Kev's going to discuss the digital leadership strategy, and he's going to provide an overview of the benefits and team impact 1 year on with low code. They've been building reusable digital apps, and their use and contribution to the community of Croydon. And then I think, Kev, I'm going to quiz you about your plans, low code and digital, for the next 5 years or so. So, I mean, I guess, Kev, my first question to you is, obviously you were quite early in 2020, you were involved in the leadership strategy, which, oh, welcome, whoever that is. But yeah, Kev, you were involved in the sort of the leadership strategy decision to follow a platform approach, I believe. So could you explain a bit more about that?
Yeah, so we had Croydon Digital Service was just formed, whole new leadership team there, and they knew that we needed like a development platform to deliver our new digital strategy. Yeah, we needed to focus more on providing services online, and that meant that we had to be able to build apps quickly and iterate them frequently. So our existing tech stack really wasn't able to enable us to do that. You know, we had a dynamic CRM. We got a whole C# My Account built on an Azure stack, and it was really apparent that it wasn't the easiest stack to build on, and you needed lots of very specific skills and very expensive skills, and our contractor spend was through the roof, and we had lots of bright staff within the team who weren't really being fully utilised, and you know, those staff were just doing BAU all the time. It was quite boring for them. They're just kind of sorting out issues with people trying to log on to My Account and everything. And we didn't have a lot of capacity outside of those contractors to develop new apps. So I came along and I put together this business case to save us a fair amount of money, actually, by migrating away from My Account and Dynamics. And it was met with a little bit of wariness. You know, it's very new to a lot of our developers, and it was very new to our architects. So, yeah, a little bit of pessimism around that. But we kind of got them to agree to do a 1 year trial, a proof of concept for a year. And we put a tender out, and Netcall won the tender. And our plan at that point was to kind of get 5 people trained up, build a couple of apps, probably wouldn't get them out into the wild, but we'd get as far as doing like UAT, and we'll get users to have a look at them and feedback. And we just really wanted to test the water and see where the low code was for us.
Brilliant. And then, well, I guess if that was early in 2020, I guess then you sort of you're into that year, and then I'm assuming that the pandemics hit.
Yeah.
And obviously you're then sort of leading the digital team through very uncertain times. What happened with like sort of sprints and that sort of thing with regards to sort of delivering apps and that sort of thing? How did that work?
We weren't really sprinting at that time. We were just kind of dabbling, I think is fair to say. We hadn't really done a lot with the platform. We got a few staff who'd been trained up. They'd done their basic 3 days training. None of them had finished their certification. You know, they hadn't really built anything. And then the pandemic hit, and we had to suddenly deliver all these brand new services. And everybody on this panel knows what happened back then. You know, it was crazy. You know, so in the first kind of couple of weeks, we had to do loads of architecture stuff, like set up single sign-on, set up our DNS routing so that people landed on croydon.gov.uk pages. We had to set up ODBC connections to Power BI to do reporting. We had to set up connections to our LLPG for address lookup, Active Directory to get all our employees into the system. And that was frantic. You know, that was kind of me working really closely with the architects, and a lot of help from Netcall, it's got to be said, to get all that set up when we were really new to this. And but all of that was really good investment, because we're still using all those capabilities today. Every app we've built uses all of those capabilities. With the staff, you know, they'd had their basic training. They probably weren't certified. But they were experienced devs. They were developers before. Traditional developers, not low-code developers, and we just had to throw them into making applications. I was mentoring them. We're lucky enough to have James Bovington a day a week, and he was mentoring them as well. And within a very short space of time, we created shielding apps. We created, to get food and medicine and prescriptions out to shielded people. A sit rep app to be able to kind of manage all of our redeployments of staff around the council. We were paying grants to businesses. That all happened within a few weeks. The first few sprints, literally within 2 or 3 sprints, we'd got those apps spun up and working and live. So, that was, that really proved, very early on into our PAC, I think we proved that we needed low code. So, that was one thing. It was interesting. We had to shift focus a lot. So, you're always busy, aren't you? But it's amazing how much stuff we put down at that point to refocus on getting the platform up and running, and how actually the stuff we put down didn't really have that much of a negative impact. It refocuses everybody, on things that matter. So in that respect, I think it was a very productive time, really. Apart from that, just generally all the stuff we had to do, deploying laptops to everybody to work from home, deploying teams across the organization. It was just, we were working some really, really long hours. And I'm sure everybody else in this room was doing the same, just, 70, 80-hour weeks just to kind of get everything up and running.
And I guess the other thing I wanted to ask you about is, obviously, you've gone on this sort of low-code journey 1 year in. You're obviously putting all these hours in. Everyone's focusing on this one objective. Almost as a complete organisation. But we have talked before in the past, you and I, about the role of digital and IT in a council, and I guess this sounds like an opportunity for digital IT to I guess really shine within the organisation. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there was a lot of kind of praise coming our way, which is unusual for digital IT team, because normally you only get mentioned when things go wrong. And at the time, people started talking about the really good work we're doing, and that was really good. And it really kind of got us to get our message across, because I strongly believe that we only exist to provide services and to enable our departments to provide their services, and we exist to kind of help them transform and do things better and do things cheaper. So what we do, we're no different to those departments. We deliver services. We don't deliver software. We deliver services. And so we very quickly formed these kind of multidisciplinary teams full of like delivery managers and product owners and interaction designers. This is all happening right at the beginning, right at the beginning of the pandemic, just so that we could continue delivering kind of all of our services to the masses. And then our staff that were left, who weren't off sick or weren't caring or weren't isolating, they could concentrate on those really vulnerable people that really needed a lot of help back then. So, and that's what digital is, isn't it? It's so you can help you can do all your high volume stuff at very low cost and without a lot of kind of need for interaction, but your really valuable staff can then concentrate on those people that need our services the most and can't be served by just providing an e-form and an SMS confirmation of that we received their requests.
Let's tell you what, just quickly, fellow panel members, would you agree with, do you echo those sentiments? Please unmute. Whilst I love the nod, I'd like us to expand on the nod, because you're all you are all sort of immersed in the digital and IT arena, and I think it's worth sharing a few minutes within Kev's space just to do you echo his sentiments? Do you reinforce them? Unmute and let me know. I tell you what, I'll go around. I'll do a bit of celebrity squares. Jan, you're at the top of my. Would you echo those sentiments?
Absolutely, and I haven't spoken to Kev for a while, and it's really interesting in terms of the parallels that Kevin, you're describing in your journey to what we had here, and COVID was a big experiment that was imposed on us, and lots of valuable stuff has come out of that in terms of how we take low-code forward. So yeah, completely agree.
Brilliant, thanks, Jan. And Craig, what about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the slight difference in what Kevin's mentioned to our experience through COVID is we haven't been getting a massive amount of praise internally. The teams that we have supported have got masses and masses of praise, public health and commissioning and what have you. Yeah. But they've been doing the bits that hit the press. Yeah. So we could maybe do a bit more work to help send that message. But using the low-code platform has been a massive enabler of that. And without it, those teams wouldn't be getting the praise that they are receiving. But it's deserved as well. We completely back our colleagues in public health and what have you.
Well, you get an assist there, don't you?
You get an assist.
You're like the Kevin De Bruyne cross there. You certainly get the assist. I know we've got a question now, but let's just come to Mike. Mike, would you echo that?
I would, and we see the platform as a way of releasing the efficiencies that we generate in the processes is a way of releasing capacity within the organisation. Our councillors have got a really ambitious, shall we say, work programme for building back after COVID and so on, which will take time and resources. And what we're hoping to do is to be able to do that within the current headcount in the organisation, but as I say, by using the platform to release capacity to deliver some of these other building back better services.
Brilliant, cheers, Mike. And James.
Yeah, I think I agree again. It's the function of digital seems to be to support, doesn't it? And so if you think of a digital transformation, really it's service design, isn't it, ultimately? And then the digital products will just be enabling that, whatever the good service practice is. And the tech shouldn't be constraining it. So it's a supporting role, but it's something that if you're doing it in-house, you can do it much more bespoke. You can do it, like you're not constrained to what an off-the-shelf product would constrain you to, and obviously that would get in the way of good service practice.
Brilliant. Thanks, panelists, and just stay there because Kev, I'm going to ask this to you. Mike, you don't need to respond to this. It looks like so. Anne Louise has asked, how have you incorporated your telephony platform and also triage process to work alongside your forms and customer account capability?
So we haven't migrated a solution yet. We're still on Dynamics and we're still on our telephony solution. I think we're going to be procuring telephony probably in the future, in the near future, and we're going to be implementing Liberty Create as our CRM, the Citizen Hub as our CRM shortly. So I think it's too early for me to answer that. I don't know if anybody else has got any experiences, but we're not there yet with our contact center solution yet. We're about 6 months behind where we should be because of all the COVID apps we've had to buy.
So Craig, where are you up to?
Yeah, we're a little bit closer. So one of our projects I'll talk about today is sort of highways transformation piece, and that's been built within our sort of CRM, the Citizens Hub architecture. We are Liberty Converse customers as well, and the two will be hooked up very shortly. So call into contact center, we can screen pop the residents' information, and we'll be able to see their case history and where they are, and give our service centre staff a much more complete view of that customer. So not quite live, but coming in the next sort of 5 weeks, I'd say.
And Jan, James?
Yeah, we're much in the same position. So we're building our CRM on Liberty Create. We've just purchased Liberty Converse, so that's a big piece of work for the next 6 months or so.
Brilliant, thank you. We've got 2 more questions. We'll rush through these. Well, not rush through. Kev, Paul's saying, were you able to expand the development contributors to other skills beyond your original developers?
Sorry, say that again.
You mentioned the skills of your original core development team. Were you able to expand the development contributors to other skills beyond your original developers?
Yeah, so I think it's been really good to kind of get other people in. We've got user researchers in the team, we've got interaction designers, we've got content designers. So when we form this multidisciplinary team, we put in all those skills. But one thing that I have noticed that the platform's been able to do, and that's allowing people to become kind of far more T-shaped and be able to do far more for themselves. So we had people who were just testers before, and those testers are now developing software as well. And we have people that were just kind of configuring software and supporting software, and now they're actually building applications themselves. So it enables people to do far more and to get far more involved and just have more interesting lives really at work, doesn't it? It's I think those people are really enjoying being able to get more involved in how these applications are put together, rather than just kind of picking holes in the applications we've got or rewording stuff, far more involved.
Excellent. And just one final question before we move on is Morris asks, you said that you introduced product owner, product manager. Did this mean a new structure within your section?
Yeah, so we had a restructure before the pandemic hit, and we've had another one after. Before the pandemic, we'd set up 3 multidisciplinary teams. Each had a large portion of the organization, and they would do all the kind of the line of business applications and the new stuff. Since the pandemic, we've actually kind of changed that around a bit, and now there is a single multidisciplinary team for the low-code platform, rather than it being a little bit in each of the 3 other teams. It wasn't really working with the 3 teams. There's too much crossover. So yes, we did restructure. We had a whole load of new posts put in. We're very lucky to have Tori as our product owner. I didn't know what a product owner was until I worked with Tori. She's amazing. And we got Janine as our delivery manager, and she just makes sure that everything gets done, and she's cracking the whip the whole time and unblocking us. I talked about it a lot, about agile and about all these roles, and now we're kind of living it. It all makes a lot more sense. I knew what it was in theory before last year, but now we've been living it for a year. It does make a lot of sense, and it feels like a really good way to work.
Right. Just another quick one in the chat box. What about the ability to integrate into existing back office systems, e.g. Northgate, M3? Were you able to do this yourselves, or did you need Netcall's input?
So again, we're only just starting that journey, but we're currently doing loads of integration work with Veolia, our waste provider system, because we're building our waste apps as well. It seems everybody starts with waste, and it's going all right, actually. We've got a couple of different methods that we can use. We've got a SOAP API and we've got a REST API. They give us various options. We're investigating both. We're going to see which one performs best. We've been on that for a couple of weeks now, and it's going really well. We've done proof of concepts on lots of things like getting the bin day lookup done, posting a missed bin request. We haven't needed a lot of assistance from Netcall on that. There was a couple of little things that cropped up that they needed to do little patches for to get those specific adapters working. We're using the generic adapters. We're not using custom made adapters for those connections. So a couple of little things came up, but they were resolved pretty quickly, and now we're well on our way to getting those waste systems fully integrated and getting the processes built out.
Brilliant. So I'm going to resume my questions for you, and I guess while you've been talking there, I guess one could say you were pretty fortunate to trial low code when you did. Fortunate being, I guess sort of, probably there are far better words than fortunate. But I guess what would the situation have been had you not? What would have been the alternative? Where would you have been, and that sort of thing?
I honestly don't know. I don't know how we would have. I can just imagine multiple spreadsheets, people creating access databases, people, Microsoft Forms, and trying to use, just products that aren't really designed to do what we're doing. We would have got through it, but it would have been far more painful. So yeah, I think it was really fortunate that we were in the middle of this POC when this hit, and fortunate in other ways as well. I mean, it's no secret that Croydon's not in the best financial situation right now. I'm sure everybody's aware of what we're going through, and a big part of our solution to this financial situation we find ourselves in is digital as well. So in more ways than one, it was fortunate, yes.
Excellent. And I mean, so how's the organisation received it? Has it, has this changed the organisation in a way around its attitude towards transformation?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, one of the nicest things that happened in the last year is that we created a little internal app. It was only for the Croydon Digital Service, and it was just going to be a project tracker. Really simple. You put a project in, you can instantly see what status it's at, and that got shown kind of just in passing to our finance team, who were delivering this massive savings plan. And they said, what software are you using? And so, well, it's something that we built in house. And within a few days, we'd had to iterate that and make it multi-portfolio, so that the PMO could have that to deliver massive millions and millions and millions of pounds worth of savings. And that was a really nice thing to come out of this. And that happened before we went out for our 5-year procurement, which we've now just settled, and it was all really nice to kind of get those important people who held the purse strings to kind of get on board as well, because they could suddenly see the value of what we were doing. And until you get hands-on with it, until you actually experience it, and until you're on the kind of receiving end of those really quick iterations, we were doing deployments every day to get this tracker fit for their purpose, because, as well as ours. But they experienced that, and they really liked it, and I think that did help us somewhat in persuading them to let us have this for a longer term.
Brilliant, excellent. I've only got a couple more questions, and this one is about I guess as we all look to recover out of the pandemic, and I've chatted this through with Mr. Dave Briggs, who's obviously at Croydon Council, and I think we've probably touched upon it before. But as we come out of as we recover from the pandemic, I think there's going to be more and more of a need to collaborate with each other and potentially reuse stuff that other people have built. And obviously, Netcall has this wonderful community and sort of app share. And I just want to know how that sort of worked within, your sort of strategy, and how important it might be moving forward to the organisation.
It's saved us many months of development so far. We took the Citizen Hub, and we're going to use that as our CRM. If we were to build a CRM from scratch, that would take us at least 6 months, even in no code. So it saved us that amount of money. We're using things like the Bulky Waste Accelerator. We're working really closely with Adrian Worthing. Like I say, we've got James is working for us a day a week as well. And so all of their knowledge that they've got and all of the stuff that they're building, we can share really easily through that common member of staff, and that's working really well. And we're benefiting massively from that. You just kind of think we're all of us councils, we're all doing the same thing. We're all working in our little silos. We're all building the same thing 400 times over across the country. And there's got to be a better way. We talk about this quite a lot, but sharing apps has got to be the future. Even if they're just accelerators that are going to get you 25-50% of the way there, it all adds up. It's all savings. Widgets, presenters. If you can save half a day here and a quarter of a day there, it just makes us far more productive, doesn't it? We've got to try. And the other thing is, we can see things coming as well. Like recently, there's been an announcement that the energy efficiency grants are going to be devolved to local authorities from central government. How can we, as a group, kind of get ahead of that and maybe create an accelerator so that we don't all have to create that app to do the energy efficiency grants in the future? Can we just do that once? Can somebody just pick that up, run with it for a few weeks, create the accelerator, and save everybody else. If we can start looking a bit forward and forecasting what our needs are going to be going forward, maybe we can be a bit more, maybe we can all save a bit of time and a bit of money.
Well, you've already raised that here with 3 of your, I guess your potential collaborators and co-sharers. So hopefully that will take off. We've got a quick question from Imran, who says, it seems there are in-flight projects at Croydon which remain in progress a year on. Is there anything that has been delivered that can be demoed in terms of an end-to-end digital solution for a given process?
Yeah, so all of our COVID apps are full end-to-end solutions, and I think it's fair to say that the stuff that we started before COVID has been on hold for a year. So yeah, that's going on. But we've delivered a lot. We delivered a whole new website on Drupal 8 in that time as well. We're building the transactional services to go on top of that. We built a housing booking system, which integrates with the existing My Account housing form, which was really successful. We've delivered a lot actually, and we're more than happy to demo end-to-end solutions to anybody if they want to come along and have a chat. Excellent.
Thank you very much. So I guess the sort of final question for me would be, what lessons have you learned from, I guess, the last 12 months, and how might that inform your work moving forward?
So I think one of my biggest lessons is that you can use your prototypes. All these COVID apps, we wouldn't normally put them live in the state they were, but we had to, so we put them out there. And so even in their earliest iterations, you can use your apps. It's fine, they're useful, and they're gonna, and they're gonna be fine. And then you're gonna get such valuable feedback from using them in their earliest versions to inform how you iterate. Just build something, get it out there. That's one of the things that I've learned. And some of them might not work, some of them might fail, and that's all right as well. We built a shielding app. When we had to do a major iteration, we actually decided to scrap it and start again, because we learned so much from the first time we built it that we thought, well, actually, we'll build shielding 2, when we went into another lockdown, and take everything that we learned and build it far more streamlined. The first one was far too complex. We over-engineered that. So you can fail as well, then that's allowed, and that's fine. You learn from it and you get better. I mentioned earlier, some of your simplest ideas will be some of the best ones. Some of your simplest apps will be the ones that have the biggest impact. That delivery tracker, just a single object and a form and a couple of reports. It's actually had the biggest impact on our authority and the way that we're going to find all our savings. So don't think this is only a very simple basic app. It's probably not worth anything. It could well be your most valuable app that you have. And I think the final thing that we learned is you got to bring your staff along as well, because we've got some staff in the team who haven't really been able to get hands-on because they've been too busy keeping the lights on all the legacy systems, and that was one of the things that hasn't gone so well in the last year. Is that we've got a couple of staff that we really need to bring up to speed now, and they're feeling a little bit left behind because lots of us are doing low code and some of them aren't. So really do kind of ensure everybody's got the time to join that journey and not get left behind.
Excellent. Thanks, Kev. Been very insightful. I ask you to please stay around but mute your mic until asked to unmute it. But that was absolutely excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Next up, we have, let's see. Well, we've got Mr. Craig Barker, who's recently been made taken up to the heady heights of Senior Digital Service Design Officer at Cumbria County Council. Congratulations, Craig.
Thanks,
on that
Nick.
Promotion, and good to see you again. And So yeah, Craig, I think again he's going to talk around how the team delivered around COVID and transformation projects over 2020. They've done a lot around commissioning in adult social care. And Craig, I've got a number of questions you'll be pleased to know to ask you. So if you're ready for those,
absolutely, fire away.
Fire away, right. So the first one is. You know, I obviously know for a fact that you've obviously got now sort of 5 in that digital team, and you've had a very, very busy year. And I think the last time we spoke, and I put some sort of content on my website about what Cumbria have been up to, you had more than 20 services transformed. So yeah. What have been the highlights for you 1 year on?
So obviously the COVID response work's been up there. You mentioned the work we've been doing with adult social care and commissioning. I guess I'll give a little bit of a summary about maybe 4 highlights that we have. So the commissioning piece of adult social care was not part of the COVID plan at all. And it evolved out of our work that we'd done with our sort of vulnerable people service and our track and trace service, and that was a case of what you get when you start to have smart people looking at the data and being engaged with service design that normally wouldn't have been. Our Director of Public Health, our commissioning team, realised that there was a brilliant scope to use data that we had in track and trace systems to enrich the data that the commissioning team were already capturing around outbreaks in care homes, and that could then inform where people were placed in care homes, gave us much better data for when to sort of lock down those care homes. I think it was a 28-day national process for that. And yeah, we've had wonderful quotes out the back of it that doing that piece of work has ultimately saved lives and prevented people being put in an area of danger due to their specific needs. So yeah, the other big COVID response piece of work we did was a track and trace solution. And much like Kevin said just earlier, going live with your earliest iteration is absolutely the way forward. So track and trace was launched after 5 days. It now looks worlds apart from it did in those first 5 days. It's grown many arms and legs, and shifted along with the way that nationally reporting has changed and the way that our teams want to manage that. And the track and trace came about because our Director for Public Health realised he wanted a local track and trace solution. He had the option. I think they even started using spreadsheets for a few weeks, realised it wasn't the way. But we've been involved in our vulnerable people piece of work. He asked if it was something that we could deliver, and again, it was first iteration production release within 2 working weeks. But again, we had business as usual to think about as well last year, and we had commitments to make savings. So one of the highlights was we still managed to deliver our saving commitments. I think we put in the budget about 350k, and we found that by transitioning sort of complaints teams into the service centre. So I think a couple of our attendees today had mentioned that they are looking to build complaints and FOIs, and that's something that we've done for the complaints team. Within the system, it's sort of end to end and includes MP correspondence and compliments and all those other little add-ons, which if we've not already stuck on the app share, it's something I'm sure we can stick on the app share. Yeah, absolutely.
Could you elaborate just a little bit more on that commission, on the track and trace stuff? Because I know that I've recently seen some press around it. Around is it Colin, the Director of Public Health, Colin Cox?
Colin Cox, the Director of Public Health, and he has been a huge advocate of the work we have been doing. So I think we're at 37,000 odd cases, and we're currently tracking about 96-97% of contacts traced, which is, we're always above the national average. We're doing a piece of work on the back of, so if it wasn't for low code, we wouldn't have got that out. And because we're able to build in APIs and connectivity with other systems very easily with the low code platform, we're working in a pilot with a few other local authorities with central government to directly access their contact tracing information. And yeah, the benefits that Colin's seen, and there have been some absolutely fantastic people on the ground. We've been using colleagues in our districts. So at Cumbria, we are an upper tier local authority, and we have 6 districts. And there's been a lot of people from those districts that have helped with contact tracing. Is that Colin? And so we've formed this multi-agency approach. We've been able to onboard. It wasn't that good. Don't worry about it. No, it was. We formed this excellent multi-agency approach where we've got environmental health workers who know organisations in Cumbria, managing those contact tracing calls. People that may not be comfortable about giving their information to the national system have been speaking to us, and that's fed into the sort of outbreak management. Schools have been able to close bubbles. Organisations have been able to identify outbreaks very quickly and change their processes, and it's all due to the information and the data that we've been able to provide relatively easily through track and trace.
Brilliant, excellent. Well, that's we always knew there'd be good stuff coming from Cumbria, so thank you very much for that. And the Colin that did enter and then exit has missed out greatly. So I just wanted, so obviously again, team of 5. I think I've met most of them apart from the new starters today. What was the impact of COVID on the team then?
It's been, well, we've all been exhausted, but it's shown that we can still do what we do well in the office really well remotely. And the impact on the team, I suppose, is we are exhausted because we're so much more approachable than we were previously. We have a much greater reach now within the organisation. Cumbria is quite a big geographic area. Some teams would work sort of a decent 2.5 hours away by car, and if they wanted to engage with us, it would typically be the case that a meeting would be put in place somewhere in the middle, and we go meet sort of 6 weeks down the line when everybody's diaries converged. Now we're a lot more approachable. That sped up that process massively, and along with that reach has come sort of greater complexity as well. So what COVID has done, all those COVID response projects have been sort of multi-agency, multidisciplinary projects, which is a little bit unusual or to put it another way, we're at the beginning of that journey in Cumbria. And you've now got people that had never worked with us before are championing the way digital and our sort of continuous improvement approach and prototyping within the low-code platform can get your service to where you want to be much quicker. So yeah, the complexities come in now because we're engaging with people from different roles, different mindsets even, that previously wouldn't have been involved in a sort of service redesign piece of work. They'd be used to sort of handing over a design spec or a functional spec of some sort and hoping they got back at the end of the day what they wanted. And highways projects we've got, well, in fact, so in 2018, when we were starting our low-code journey, I had a conversation with Jan Jonker, and he gave us some brilliant advice to start with some small services and do them well. and we followed that advice, and we've done quite well, and that sort of word of mouth has spread. And now we're doing a piece of work with a highway service where I think over 200 people have now been involved in the service design through show and tells and retrospectives and what have you. So managing that complexity is not necessarily just driven by COVID, but COVID has helped as well.
Brilliant, excellent. I've got a question here in the chat, which I'm going to ask before I ask my couple of last questions. I think this is to you, Craig, but I might also open it up. Azra has asked, what about your web content platform? Does Netcall integrate or launch from your website, or is Netcall part of your web content platform?
So no, Netcall doesn't provide a CMS, and I think our view on it is we wouldn't want a CMS within the Netcall platform. We're currently using Tridion SDL for our content management system, but doing a piece of work with the local Gov Drupal piece of work to potentially transition to Drupal. The way it works currently is we've built the hooks within the Netcall environment within low code to go sort of seamlessly from cumbria.gov.uk into online forms. And the early days of doing that was just, here's a link and now you're on a form. And we deliberately kept it separate, much in the way that you would do if you were going from your website to a payment provider. And the reason being at the time was we wanted people to understand that they were using a sort of online service at that point, and they weren't navigating content. And that may change as we sort of evolve our content strategy. It's an area we're particularly weak at the minute, but we keep them separate. I don't know how the other guys are doing it, but yeah, that's us.
It's almost like you can read my mind, Craig, because I will ask the other panelists, because I think get everyone's contribution. Jan, James, Kev obviously has already identified that they're using the part of the Drupal project. So Kev, I won't ask you to unless you want to. Mike, what are you doing about web content platform?
So I'm planning to get involved in the Drupal project. I've already had some early sort of contact with that project, because I mean, once all your forms are in the Create platform and you're only left with static content, then an open source web platform becomes a possibility. And for those that are looking to build a business case, then for the Create platform, you can factor in a saving for whatever more sophisticated platform you're currently using. Because ultimately you won't need that complexity.
Okay, thank you. And Jan, James, you unmuted.
Yeah, we have it's similar with us. I think for a lot of councils, the content itself is kind of a legacy, isn't it? With websites, there's a lot of it. I think we use content. I think it's T4 we use as content provider. I'm not sure about our ambition to move to Drupal, but I think it's a fantastic idea. Yeah, when it's similar, we kind of link out to from the website into the online forms, similar to Cumbria.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, gents. Okay, right. So back to you, Craig. You're in the home straight now. Don't worry, I've only got a couple more questions for you. This one is one that has actually been not puzzling me, but is one that I think that sort of maybe every single authority probably needs to sort of ask itself, and it's around this sort of environment for change. What is it that's enabled your team to sort of deliver and encourage sort of rapid transformation and development and I guess evolution of your digital stuff? Is it a digital plan? Is it the fact you've got a blank canvas? What is it you think that what are the conditions within your particular council, Cumbria County Council, that sort of enables this sort of change to take place?
I think to make it really simple, I think speed and engagement, being able to, much like I was talking about, the old way of working was providing or working with a systems analyst to produce a spec, a full spec, and the work would then disappear for 12 weeks or so and come back. And now, day one, integrating with other teams, we're building prototypes in the room with them. They can see immediately that what we're talking about, what the capability is. Without the low-code platform, that would be harder. With much like Kevin, we had a clunky tech stack where we would have to sort of take things away and hand it over to a developer. But with it being low-code, you've got BAs that can build prototypes. With even in a session like this, somebody building to demonstrate what's possible, and that engagement should continue. So the speed it's already there, and then we continue to engage. We continue to onboard ideas from people that normally wouldn't be involved in that process. So maybe officers or apprentices that have come along to a show and tell can have their say. And but also we noticed during the crisis that we worked really well focusing our efforts on one thing. And I was in a session just the other day where a lot of us were wondering if it was prioritization that encouraged that. And one of my colleagues made an excellent observation that they felt it was permission. So permission from our leaders, permission from managers and senior managers to work in a collaborative fashion within the organisation and across local authorities is the real sort of catalyst for change in this area and to enable that.
Brilliant. I'm going to ask everybody else. Come on, just unmute. I quite like this this collaborative answering. Jan, Mike, Kev, what do you think about just in an executive short summary? How what do you think it has? What climates exist or what conditions exist within your organisations that have allowed you to do what you've been able to do?
I think for us at Adrian Worthing during COVID, it was focus, and we only had one priority, and that was community response. And the rule book went out. We didn't have to do bureaucratic paperwork to get a project approved. It was literally, today we're meeting, we're getting all the stakeholders around the table, we're getting the developers around the table, and the project just started. And I think also, it is amazing how quickly service siloed and hierarchy disappeared. It didn't really matter what service you were from or what your status was in terms of hierarchy. People just were focused, and it really showed the strength in people, actually. And I think some people showed sides of them that we hadn't seen in their day-to-day role. But I think the leadership was important. We had Paul Brewer, our director for digital, was on it, and he was hands-on. He was there every day, early in the morning, late at night. So yeah, I very much agree with Craig's observations. Don't know, James, if you've got any other observations for Aidan Worthing.
No, just second that really. Yeah, everyone was available with a clear vision, single focus. Everyone kept remain well briefed throughout. Really, it was it's one of those things. I think we've always said sort of digital on the top table is quite good because you end up with a mandate where actually it's the way to solve a lot of these problems is with technology. We're fortunate to live in a time where you can do everything remotely now. I mean, 5 or 6 years ago that probably wouldn't have been possible, would it? And so there's so many tools we can use. We can we can simplify processes, and there's so much that's possible. And it's having that realization at the very top and that feed down.
Brilliant, thank you. And Mike?
Yeah, well, actually, what Jan says is quite true, and we've operated without silos or departments since about 2014. So it's just really easy for us to coalesce around a problem. and move people into solving it or delivering that particular service away from other services as needed.
Thanks, Mike. Kev?
Yeah, so I think for me it's kind of concentrating on the MVP as well, because when you're firefighting like that, you can't, services can't have all the bells and whistles that they want. You have to really focus on what is the bare minimum product that we have to put out to be able to achieve what we need to achieve. And if you do your traditional projects, you end up with a lot of kind of would like to haves in there, from the start. And this, I think the way we've been developing recently is kind of, do you really need that? Is that really, do you really want us to spend 4 days building this feature for you when you could go live without it? And that's so it's really kind of working out what is the minimum viable product that you need to build to be able to deliver that service. And then other things can come later, and people need to trust you that you won't just drop that product as it is, and that you will iterate it, and you will put in some of the fancy stuff that they would like to have eventually. And I think we're starting to prove that we're able to do that, and we're willing to do that. So you can have a bit of your product now, you can go live with it, and that will save you a whole load of time and effort. And then in a few weeks' time, we'll revisit it, and we'll build you something else to go on top. And if people know that you're good to your word, and you will revisit it and you will iterate it, then I think they're more likely to buy in and allow you to release something at a very, very early stage.
Brilliant, thanks, Ken. Right, Craig. Just a quick one here. A quick question from Laura at Stockport Council. How do you ensure consistency of development content if you open it out to other disciplines who perhaps are not used to it or done it before?
Yeah, just to be clear, the development's still within our small team of 5 at the minute. Within that team of 5, we very early on developed some sort of design guidelines and best practices for the way we would develop. So, for instance, all of our web pages are single column. We don't break anything out into multi-column pages, which starts to look messy on mobile devices. And manage that within the team. We are looking, Laura, the idea of citizen developers, which I know Adrian Worthing have looked at. We're starting to identify a few people within the organisation that sort of making themselves useful in that sort of area. It will just be a case of working really closely with them, but also sticking a little bit of governance in with the platform. So you typically we work with 3 environments within the low-code platform. I think you can have up to 5, maybe more. So we have our build, our test, and our live environment. It may be the case that those citizen developers work in the build environment and it gets sort of signed off by somebody within the core team before we promote it.
Does that answer it, Laura? Brilliant, 2 thumbs. All right, Craig. So just last question: lessons learned and the future.
What we want to take into the future is more open and transparent working. We've learned that throughout the last year that being honest and open about our failures as much as our successes has sort of gained that trust that Kevin was just talking about, that we're good to our word. Our very first iteration of our vulnerable people product was like a fail fast and move forward piece. We had advice from our senior leaders to build a system that was going to contact every shielding resident in Cumbria, make a phone call to them, and we didn't necessarily agree it was the right call. When we added up the numbers, there was going to be about 3 weeks worth of phone calls. Quick pivot. So that's flexibility, being open, transparent. We've got local government reform on the cards, and that we'll find out the review from that very shortly. And being open to change, which I think, speaking with colleagues, is this year has helped because everybody's gone through it at once. You always have people resistant to change, but because we've all had to do it together, everybody's having to have their meetings on Teams now. Previously, there'd been resistance. It's keeping that momentum up and I even spoke with one of our senior auditors yesterday, who commented that even within their remit of work, they're being more pragmatic and adopting a bit of an agile mindset throughout their department as well. So if we can, we'd like to influence an agile mindset throughout our authority.
Excellent. Brilliant, Craig. Thank you very much. Yeah, wonderful insight. And so, yeah, I will probably come back to you in a bit, as has been the collaborative way of the panel. So if you could mute yourself just for the meantime. And now we come to Mike Ward, who's head of IT at South Hams and West Devon. And I think, Mike, you're interesting in as much as, well, I'm sure you're interesting in many ways, but certainly in this particular sort of setting and discussion, just because you got your you got the platform pretty much just as we went into the pandemic, didn't you? So you know, how did that work, and how did that support your team?
That's right. We were, the pandemic just about beat us to when we were meant to be going live with Create, and Netcall kindly brought forward the go live date specifically so that we could start using it for our COVID response processes, which was great. I mean, just as a bit of context, we're using it for forms, and it's actually replacing our CRM as well. So it was a bit of a lifesaver in that sense, because we could, you know, as Kevin had mentioned, we could quickly deploy something that was minimally viable and kind of worked, safe in the knowledge that we could iterate daily to get it up to the kind of quality that we would have wanted. You know, and the changes are really quick to implement and to deploy. That first app was really successful, or first process, because it kept the members happy, because we were, you know, compared to other councils, we were able to deliver. They were really emphasising that they wanted to get this COVID grant money out to citizens as soon as possible, and it enabled us to meet their expectations much quicker than we probably would have done if we'd have done it all, I mean, using an alternative platform. A little mention about the app share, because we did take some inspiration from Croydon's app in the app share. We downloaded it, looked at it, and we didn't use it, but it meant we could look at it and reassure ourselves that for our first app we were on the right track. But our developer thought, well, by the time I've tweaked it, I might as well just build it myself, actually, which is what she did. And at the time as well, and this may have been the same for everyone else, there are lots of peaks in demand for COVID response applications for grants and so on. And, you know, the platform stood up quite well to these peaks in demand of lots of concurrent transactions as soon as we released another form or a piece of legislation changed. So that was quite valuable to us. So kind of moving forward through the period of the pandemic, since the first application, we've now released about 48 processes live. Wow. You know, we spent a little bit of time developing the back end a little bit more, or the case management side of it. We went live in August with freedom of information, general inquiry and complaints. And then gradually through the year, we've trickled out more and more applications, business grants, self-build register, stray dogs, car park issues, car parking permits, fly tipping, the reported stuff, elections recruitment, review or escalate an FOI request. We were about to buy a street naming and numbering back office product that integrated with that LLPG, but the users weren't too keen on it. So we actually built the back office solution using the Netcall product as well, and they're really, really pleased with it. So it includes all the management of street naming and numbering, and there's about 5 or 6 different street naming and numbering processes attached to that. And that didn't take very long. It took, looking at this, 45 days to build, to replace the street naming and numbering back office solution that we were planning on buying. So, you know, that was really good. So yeah, it's been an interesting year with Netcall. We found that the forms make it really easy for customers as well. And a couple of years ago, we got involved with the Institute of Customer Services, I think it is, and invited some feedback. And to be honest, our response was pretty poor, and we compared quite badly with other authorities. And I think a lot of that was due to the way we'd gone through our previous transformation, which was more about saving money than delivering quality services. But as a result of that, now we quite value feedback from customers, and we build a feedback opportunity into every form, every process. So there's just a quick, I think it came from the app share actually. It's sort of 1 to 5 stars and some comments, and that goes on to the tail end of every form. So we've had over 5,000 now since we started, and they're almost all 4 or 5 stars. We're getting really positive feedback from the forms, whereas in the past we had complaints. And there's one interesting one where the customer gave us 1 star for the service, but 5 stars for the ease of complaining using the form. So yeah, it's been not only has it been really useful for us or vital for us through the pandemic. Just to put some sort of numbers on that, we've had, for example, 14,000 emails responses to questions that have come out of the Liberty platform that actually auto-index against the cases, which the business development manager is telling me that it used to take 3 to 5 minutes to index an inbound email. And so because that happens automatically now, it saved us 157 days worth of work in just indexing email responses alone. And that's out of a total of 24,000 processes that we've had initiated during the year. So yeah, it's quite interesting.
I suppose the addendum, the part 2 to that question would be, if you're bringing everything forward with implementing Liberty Create, how did that? Because we've got the pandemic and we're going into lockdown, and therefore obviously everyone is scattered to the 4 winds, certainly within the South Hams and West Devon areas. What about training on the product? How did that work?
Well, training is really good because the Netcall training modules are really useful when everyone's working from home, because quite often with training it's in the room, or knowledge sharing happens by people sharing a screen and so on. But for me, it was quite easy to get my developers trained to level 2 just by saying, there you go on the course. I went on the courses myself as well. And, it was, previous workflow platforms, the training took place over many days in a room. And I'm not sure that the online material, if you like, would have accommodated that now. But with Liberty Create, training is relatively straightforward.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. So my next question is something that we talked about before, and it's around that sort of that need for a digital strategy and how that impacts on the way that you guys have obviously responded and I guess moving into the future, because I know that recently we've talked about the Greenwich digital strategy, and how you felt that was something that South Hams and West Devon could really benefit from. Could you just expand a little bit on that for us?
Yeah. Well, I watched the conversation with Kit and looked at from Kit Collingwood from Greenwich, and looked at I think it was with the conversation with Dave Briggs actually, and then I looked at the strategy, and I was quite impressed at how clear it was and how accountable it held itself, if you like. And I thought, well, okay, some of that isn't relevant to me, but the more I looked at it, the more I thought, well, actually, we haven't, during this pandemic, we haven't really thought about a digital strategy other than just getting more and more forms out and using the platform and migrating our back office onto a new system as well. But it occurred to me that there were some gaps, if you like, that I could fill with not with a great deal of money or resource just with the effort in tying the loose ends together. So things like online, I wanted, as we move forward, I want to make sure we use the GDS standards and the forms of consistent quality, and to bring a little bit of that experience of deploying or building websites and forms to the low-code developers who were great at low-code but hadn't got that experience. I wanted to bring together some of the customer contact opportunities with the integration that we can use with Liberty Connect as well, to use Facebook Messenger and this whole sort of omni-channel experience, which we can talk about later. I was aware that we hadn't got sufficient governance. We recently did an LGA survey where what was interesting, our technical mitigation, if you like, for cyber threats and so on was quite good, but the governance and the communication around the way we use data and reported to senior management wasn't in their view quite adequate, which was a fair comment, to be honest. So I want to be able to address the governance side of our data usage, and also to use data better than we do, just in terms of informing decisions, and also revisit some retention policies which tend never to get implemented. I want to build some internal processes rather than just make them all public facing. Think about how staff collaborate using all the functionality of Teams, and to train the rest of the workforce to be a little bit more at home with using the technology that we've got, and sometimes finding their own solutions to problems. And so that crystallized into a sort of a document which I'm sharing around the council at the moment, which I'm not sure whether it'll be a standalone document, but what I do want it to do is to form parts of other area strategies, like the customer contact strategy, or policy and governance strategies, and so on. So that's where that sort of came from. But it was really kind of inspired by looking at Kit Collingwood's strategy. Quite interesting.
I was going to another sort of quick point around the sort of remote working. Did the Liberty Create, having Liberty Create, did that support and enable that remote working?
Well, in addition to the training being quite straightforward, I think we were already purposed for remote working, if you like. We'd already adapted our office to be the hot desking facility with a ratio of 6 desks to 10 people, and people were used to working from home, and the whole sort of culture was around work being a task and not a place. So really it wasn't a great deal of a transition for us to get everyone working from home. From the perspective of what we're doing with Liberty Create, we're just making things better and easier for people to develop by themselves. They don't need to be in a room with a team, and we're making things better and easier for our staff and our officers to process the cases using Liberty Create. We're getting fewer calls to the service desk because their screens aren't freezing, or they're not dealing with duplicate contacts, or so it's a lot less problematical for us when we move people onto the Create platform.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thanks very much. Well, I've only got one more question, and I guess that's sort of what's next. With the platform, moving out of moving into the recovery stage, as we're calling it, from the pandemic. What are you up to with the Create, Converse, and because you've got Create, Converse, and Connect, haven't you? I think. Yeah,
we've got Create, Converse, and Connect, and what I want to do is to exploit the strength of having all the 3 products. So one of the things we want to do is obviously the obvious one. First of all, is we're just testing the integration between Converse and Create. So as mentioned earlier, when we can screen pop and we can see, if that contact's known to us, we'll see the agent can have an option to link to the contact record, or the last 3 cases. So obviously that makes life a lot easier for them. If the contact's not known to us, then the Liberty Create contacts will be surfaced in Liberty Connect, so that they can then pick a contact to link that caller to, or even just create a new contact if they need to. So that's the next stage. And then after that, we want to use the omni-channel capability of Liberty Connect to push all of our inbound transactions into the same queue. Because at the moment, if someone rings us, they'll speak to the contact center. If someone emails us, they'll contact someone in case management. So there's no consistency as to how that contact is being dealt with. So what we're aiming to do is to add some more officers to the contact center, so that they can deal with phone calls, web chat, Facebook messages, email, scan documents, so that everything goes through the contact center. So when the phones are quiet, they've got other work to do in terms of creating processes and indexing documents. If the phones suddenly get busy, they can then gravitate towards the phones, deal with the peak in demand, and then slip back into non-phone related work. So we can deal with the peaks and troughs and flex that capability much easier. So that's the plan for the year going forward.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Mike, for your contribution, your excellent contribution. I think there will be time, hopefully, because there is another question I want to ask all of you, and it's one that you've actually initiated in my mind. So, well, if I could just ask you to mute your mic, and last but by no means least at all, we have Jan Yonko, who's Head of Customer and Digital Services, and James Bovington, Senior Digital Developer at the wonderful Ada and Worthing Borough Councils based on the South East Coast. These are the guys that have been pioneering with the low-code platform, now called Liberty Create, but used to be Matsoft, and I think it was Matsoft when Ada and Worthing bought it in, and that was 2015. So obviously there's been a lot of use of low code within Ada and Worthing, but I think my first question will be to you, James, and I'm just wondering, could you help us understand the sort of impact of the pandemic on the digital team and how you collaborated?
Yeah, we basically dropped everything and focused on building a community support app to link volunteers in the public to those in need. So not just that shielding cohort. There was because of we're in the South Coast. There's quite a high demographic of kind of elderly and vulnerable people. So there's a real worry that people would fall through the cracks. And so we wanted to also have this ambition of creating a platform for volunteers. And so it was an experiment in what you can do in these unusual circumstances. So we literally were able to build within 2 weeks two public portals, one for people to volunteer to help, and then one for residents to actually request the help, and also a relatively sophisticated case management system that was able to connect these volunteers and these residents based on kind of the type of help they were requesting and how close they were to the resident, and things like the security level of the volunteer, because they could upload the DBS certificate, and we had a vetting process. And some of these processes had already been thought through as well, so that because of the ambitions we had. So and of course, in terms of how did we collaborate, well, we were instantly all remote workers, and as we've talked a little bit about that. But that really enabled some of this working in a way, in unexpected ways, really. The fact you can be on a design session and then carry on developing, you can get a quick decision from a director because they're all available, because we have this sort of single focus, and also then you could give training to 30 people. Just jump onto a call, no meeting room bookings and all that sort of thing, no logistics like that. And we found, and the reason I call it an experiment is because actually it's what you can do when all the usual barriers fall away. and there's similar barriers for most local authorities. I suppose it kind of changes with scale, but it's sort of getting through the governance, having appropriate governance, things like that, and but also having a clear vision and not to be spread too thin. So really focused, and everyone was well briefed throughout because it was a really clear problem as well, which is, I suppose, that's quite unusual as well. There's often sort of helping people is such a nice thing to have as a focus, isn't it? It's, and it meant that it made the late nights that we spent those first few weeks quite completely worthwhile, and yeah, we had some really good results. I mean, there were 3,000 requests for helps over the course of time, but we had 500 people volunteering, which I was personally staggered. But the people that already had the ambitions for creating a platform for volunteering weren't that surprised. They knew that the appetite was out there for people to want to help, and it's meant that that's now happened. It's accelerated that ambition, which is brilliant. And we had to really, the volunteers as well, they're really well distributed right across. There's no areas where there were no volunteers, and it just meant people were getting to know their neighbours. We had all sorts of good stories coming out of it. So for example, people would know their elderly neighbour, they wouldn't have chatted with them, but now they're collecting their shopping, and absolutely brilliant. And ultimately the results were that we kind of were able to integrate with because it wasn't just volunteers, we were also kind of bringing in, assigning people to sort of local community groups and organisations, and we already have a service directory for those that the Wellbeing Service was using, and because of the integration, because of the way this was all working, Wellbeing are now using that as their main case management app. So you've got things like it allows you to mass communicate with all the volunteers at once, for example, with some new guidance or with something, and for all the residents. So it could be that you're just those in a particular cohort, but all this sort of thing was instantly available just due to the platform capabilities, really.
And I guess obviously the platform lends itself to working in an agile way. Can you sort of talk us through how you're you're working around using the platform in that agile way?
Yeah, I mean it's down to prototyping, isn't it? But I mean, low code is incredibly fast to get something going, and also you can reuse things you've built before, and components are all reusable. You don't have to worry about spinning up a web page is seconds, isn't it? And you can, the idea of forms and fields and simple things like that with a database behind would, in a full stack scenario, would be relatively difficult to achieve quickly and reuse. And so that is completely solved, and because it's solved, you can genuinely iterate a prototype. So I think it's worth noting though that the prototype is what actually ultimately becomes the product. So you're not just wireframing, and which is great. It's great to have sort of design a kind of wireframe something to you, applicable idea of what you're going to work to. But actually, what you're doing is you're co-designing and co-creating with the service. You're saying that this is, how's this? No, that's not quite right. Change it, and it's ultimately it's happening straight away. And also that helps with things like ownership. When the service are adopting an app, they really need to get on board with it, and there's no better way than getting them involved in the design and creation of it. They really feel that ownership straight away, and so what we're actually doing is we're starting with the flexible scope but a fixed time in general, which is it's agile, isn't it? And so it means there's no surprise the products that the users end up with, because they've seen it and they see it repeatedly. The needs and priorities can be adjusted throughout as you go, so it means the products stay relevant. And so with that, with that community support app, there was constantly changing circumstances. No one was really clear how it was all going to pan out. But we actually ended up having to set up a food bank in the assembly hall, and offer as well a payment functionality with bolt-on to allow people to have a paid for food box that was appropriate for some people. And we were able to just to sort of roll this out, almost instantly, and just bolt it onto the existing platform. And these sort of things, that this was available to the contact center, so they could see the list, they could answer queries as well as the back office and all the people working as connectors on this case management system.
Brilliant. Just a quick question from Laura, again from Stockport Council. Does a developer work directly with the service, or would user experience or business analysts be involved in the requirements and design?
Depends on the project and depends on I think it's the scale of the council as well, isn't it? Because obviously development digital teams scale differently according to, if you're small, it's probably your developers are probably going to be doing more than just developing. They're going to be out there in the business, which is great actually. You're able to sort of take on more of this BA role as well. But I mean, where there's been certain projects where we've had some external resources. We've had some consultants come in helping us with UX and with some of the discovery in the early stages of projects. And that works really well as well. It allows for changes in focus. But yeah, in general, at Adrian Worthing, we do more than just develop. We're out there in the business and speaking to people. We have contacts and relationships with people throughout the business, which is actually really helpful to sort of put a face on the person that's building it, I guess, from the services point of view.
Just quickly, it is time for collaboration panel time. Just quickly, Craig and Mike and Kev, do you want to sort of just give a quick answer to Laura's question as well around developers working directly with the service or user experience or business analysts involved in requirements and design? Kev, you go first.
Yeah, so I think, as Jen said, it comes down to scale. So we're lucky enough at Croydon to have a bigger digital team. And we have product owners and we have delivery managers, and so for us, they're working much more closely with the service than the developers are. So quite often Victoria will be the one getting all the user requirements, and she'll be prioritizing those and asking all those questions of the service. What really matters, what's our top priority, what are we going to do next, and that I really like, because it means that us devs are shielded from all of that, and we can just concentrate purely on building the thing. And we do have contact with the service at show and tells and stuff like that. We do regular show and tells as we're building, and that's really our chance to get direct feedback from the service, and I really like that time too. But the fact that the product owner is doing all of that kind of just all the conversations and the communicating and stuff really means that we can focus on just building the thing. So I've experienced both ends of the spectrum, working previously at Adrian Worthing, which is a very small team, working now at Croydon, which is a very large team, and they both work and they both have their advantages and disadvantages. Just horses for courses, really, isn't it?
Brilliant, thanks Kev. Craig?
Yeah, we're similar to sort of James at Adrian Worthing, and we're a very small team and everybody does a bit of everything. But interestingly, with our team, if you asked, so 80% of people in our team would say they weren't a developer or not even technical. So we have BAs and people from sort of user research backgrounds spending most of the day actually building and developing within the platform, which is testament to the ease of use of developing within the low-code platform. I suppose what that does mean is where there are sort of technical decisions to be made, they tend to fall with myself, who has a sort of development background. It does make things like change management a little bit more tricky because they're not used to that. But yeah, absolutely engaging with the service. We have our devs engaging with them because our devs are our BAs.
Brilliant, thanks Craig. And finally you, Mike.
So we have a very small team. We've got one lead low-code developer, two more junior developers, a person committed to training, and then the person that manages them that does a lot of the business analysis. So within that team, typically amongst all of them, they do the BA and then complete the finished product as well. I suppose they have a little bit of an advantage is they're a lot of experience gained in moving processes to the previous workflow platform. So a lot of the business analysis is already there. but no, it's just kept within a small team really. And at some point, then when I get the opportunity to use my developers to assist in sort of the low-code platform development, that's perhaps when we'll take on some of the integration work as well, which at the moment we leave to Netcall.
Brilliant, thanks, Mike. Is that a 1 thumbs up or a 2 thumbs up, Laura? 2 thumbs up, brilliant. Consistency is our middle name here. So brilliant, excellent, thank you. So I'm now going to move on to Jan, and as luck would have it, coinciding with this event, I understand, Jan, that Ada and Worthing have done a retro to discover best practice. Could you give us some of your hints and tips, please, around the success of the COVID projects that you've run through the low-code platform?
Yes, and if I go back a little bit further, we started on the low-code platform, as you said, in 2015, in the first few years there were some projects that worked really well, and some applications that were really well received by the teams that use them and by the ultimate customers, and there were some projects that just didn't work that well, and I had a look at those to find out, well, what's the difference, because we're using the same technology, the same developers, so why are some successful and why are some getting a bit stuck? And it tied back to the things that other colleagues have mentioned on this call. A lot of it is around relationships and trust, because with the platform, you're bringing in a different way of working that most people in services aren't familiar with, and they won't understand the language of Agile. And I didn't understand the language of Agile before I joined Ada and Worthing Councils. I came from a completely non-digital background. So I could sort of understand why people struggled with it. And if you're used to writing a specification and then giving it to someone who then locked themselves away for 6 months to build it, and you get a product back, to then say, well, actually, we're going to do this in short 2-week sprints or 4-week sprints, and we'll give you a little bit at a time. That's quite an alien concept. And I think the success or failure depended on how open services were to that, and also how well we communicated how we worked. And obviously at the start of that journey, we didn't have a track record because we were all new to it and we didn't have the products to show people. And I think, and Kev, this was when you were with us and you led a lot of this work. We did some work with our waste service in particular, and that worked really well. The team actually went down to the depot, sat with the people who would be using the system, and taught them the language, showed them how it worked, and really quickly started to develop really effective products. Contrast that with HR, who were 1 floor down from us. So digital was on the 2nd floor, HR was on the 1st floor, and they kind of felt it had been done to them, and they didn't have the ownership. And actually, communication was by email, even though people were sitting meters apart, and we didn't get the buy-in. And one other service that we had a service manager who was hell-bent on getting a legacy system in. He's left us now, but in quite a passive-aggressive way, he stopped the team from engaging. So we just got entrenched in, and it comes back to what Kev said as well, with trust. The lessons from that were take time to explain to people how you work, start small, and show them the products as they go. And it needs to be a partnership, and I think the journey we're on is still continuously evolving that partnership. I think with COVID and the community response, the teams we worked with on that actually hadn't had that much exposure to our platform. Some of them had, but not all of them had. But because it happened so quickly and because it was the focus, I think they just saw it evolving before them. And we had our economy team, so we built the apps to issue business grants, and literally with one of the grants, we paid the first grant 7 days after the government announcing it. So you see these frontline teams who are now seeing what they see as a challenge being transformed into a solution that works for them. So I think that was really powerful, and I think COVID and the community response really accelerated building that trust, the confidence, and people just understanding what the technology can do for us, and what the different roles are between the services and the digital team, and how we get the best out of it by working together. It got to the point where everyone was asking, can we have some of, we've got a couple of Jameses in the team, so it was, can we have some of James B or James C's time, because we want to do these iterations, and we just had to prioritize quite tightly. But I think there was a real energy around it, and the proof was in what the team built. So that was really powerful.
Excellent, thank you. So obviously, as I sort of stated at the beginning of this this set of questions to yourself and James, you guys are a pioneer in sort of local gov low code, and certainly with what's now known as Liberty Create. And I guess from the outside looking in, over that period of time, you've managed to get it all sorted by way of a low code approach and strategy and governance and that sort of thing. What are the challenges to people who want to sort of reach this digital maturity, do you think?
But we are still very much on a journey, and I think we'll always be on a journey. If not, I think we're doing something wrong. I think that the next stage for us is, as James said, we're a really small authority. I mean, our whole ICT and digital team is 27 members of staff, and I think some of the London authorities I've got 140 and 140 plus, and we have to cover much of the same roles as those bigger authorities. So that's a real challenge for us. But in terms of low code, I like the analogy that Catherine Howe, our director for communities, has brought in. She talks about many of you will know her, but she is a digital native, and she talks about landscape gardening, landscape design, and the gardening, and basically what the developers do is the heavy work, the landscape design, building the landscape schemes with the JCBs and planting the trees and all that side of things. But then once you've created that beautiful landscape, you need to maintain it, and you need to do the gardening. And at the moment, we rely on the developers to do the landscaping and the gardening, and the more landscaping they do, the more gardening that there is, and you kind of run out of capacity. And again, it's what others have talked about on this call. It is about how do you embed some of that gardening, some of that product ownership in services. So that's something that we're looking at now, because that's going to be the key to the sustainability of this.
Brilliant. And I guess just thinking back to when we talked about sort of connecting Liberty Converse with Create, you talked about rebuilding the CRM project.
Yep. And again, this is a piece of work that started a while back, when we were we were in the position that our customer service team and digital team worked closely together, and could see that there were some real bottlenecks in our customer journeys, but some of our services weren't ready to do the work, the redesign, the transformation to address those bottlenecks. So across customer service and digital, and again, this was still when Kev was with us. Kev worked with one of our team leaders in the contact centre to give the contact centre visibility of customer records, more visibility of customer records, because what was happening was they didn't have visibility. So you'd have a customer phoning about a repair, and we couldn't help them in the contact centre because we couldn't see what was going on with their case. So people would, and you'd then try to phone the back office, and you wouldn't be able to get hold of them. So it was a really, really poor customer experience. So we we decided, because the service wasn't ready to do the transformation, to rebuild what we had, which isn't best practice, but at least it would give the customer service team visibility. We're now in the position where services are seeing the benefit, and for example, with housing, we are now doing a redesign project, and our new CRM will support that redesign rather than the other way around. So that's a big piece of work that's ongoing at the moment. We're doing a lot of work around vulnerable customers and how we can best support them, and how we can reduce poverty. So that's one of the building blocks that we're continuing on with next.
Excellent. And I guess just my final question for you, Jan, now is, I guess, looking forward to the future, digital goals that might appear in your digital strategy.
Yeah, so I think the priorities for us for the next few years are one's around our workspaces program. So we are moving to a blended way of working. We've got a lot of staff support for that. We've got a tenant for some of our office space, which is really great. So that frees up resource for frontline services. So one of the priorities is around how we support remote working in a robust and resilient way going forward. We're working on a network renewal. We do still have, unfortunately, some of the clunky legacy systems that we won't be able to get rid of in the short term. So we're updating and migrating those to the cloud, and we're also doing a lot of work on citizen connectivity and Wi-Fi. But I think that the low-code platform is really now a cornerstone of everything that we do.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jan. Thank you very much, James. And I guess from my perspective, my list of questions is exhausted. Does anyone have any more questions, or can I reveal Mike Ward's interesting idea? Have we got any more questions? No, it's not popped up. No, well, none have popped up yet. So, Mike, why don't you share with your fellow panelists the buildingless council that we chatted about?
Yeah, I had this idea a year or so ago, and we were talking about our assets, because we're two councils with two headquarters. And someone asked me the question if we use one of the councils as a sort of a DR centre for our servers, but he said, would it be a problem if we sold the building? And I said, well, not really. We'll just locate them somewhere else. Or it could be the cloud, could be locally. I said, it's not really a problem. And then we got talking a little bit more, and I said, really, is there any reason why we can't, if that works at Tavistock, why can't we become, I called it a buildingless council. We wouldn't be actually buildingless, as Nick had pointed out, but we certainly, the question is, do we need to have a headquarters now? Because we've demonstrated for the last year that we don't. All of the barriers that the members used to put in the way about meetings and face-to-face contact, we've already proved we don't need. So my ambition then for the next year or so is to get a headquarterless council on the agenda. You know, we're certainly over capacity with what we've got, even though we do rent out some areas of our building to the county council and Job Centre Plus and so on. But we don't, I don't see now why councils need to consider keeping a building. So that's my challenge.
And do you know what? If anyone else on this call, still on this call, wishes to, have an opinion on Mike's idea, please feel free to unmute and get involved. But Jan, what do you think?
So, we were two separate councils, and politically we're still two separate councils, but we've got one officer team, and actually we got rid of Ada Civic Centre quite a few years ago, so that significantly reduced our office footprint. I think our politicians would still want their town hall and their wood-panelled chamber. We're currently having the conversations around how future council meetings will run. In terms of customer, I think we will, we're working on an appointment system, and it works a lot better than just having people walk in without having the right officers available or the right paperwork with them. But we recognise that there will always be people in crisis who do need somewhere to come and see someone. But yeah, I mean, our Workspaces AW program is around reducing our office footprint. And staff have told us only 6% don't want to work from home at all, and the rest want a mixture of blended working. So I hadn't thought about it as a buildingless council, but that's an interesting concept.
Do you know what, gents? I'm sorry, but I do realise that I've gone completely off-piste, and apologies to everyone left on the call. I think because we've got 2 minutes left, and I think a good way to sort of round this off, or round this session up, and everyone that's on the call, just to remind you, we will be sending a link out, the recording, etc. But what would be really good would be just like one key, there are a number of people on this call who have listened or are listening about how you've sort of dealt with the last 12 months, and I guess before, and how you intend to deal in the future with sort of service transformation, evolution, whatever you want to call it, using this low-code platform. So what would be the one thing, the one takeaway that you would like them to sort of, or you would give them as somebody maybe considering or thinking about a low-code strategy? And Celebrity Squares, James Bovington, far away, what's your one piece of advice or one takeaway you would give these people?
I'm a big advocate of low code. I think it's been brilliant for our council. But with local authorities, there's often the sense that it's a bit rubbish if it's going to be local authority. It's going to the IT is going to be a bit naff, but it doesn't have to be that way. With this platform, you've got the ability to really genuinely prototype and work in a new way, new to some people at councils, and I think that speaks for itself, doesn't it? Really.
Brilliant, thanks, James. Kev.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of traditional IT people out there that kind of naysayers when it comes to low code. They don't think that it can be as rich and as and deliver the services and functionality that low code can. But we're proving, all of us are proving, that you can deliver anything you like in low code. None of us have hit any insurmountable barriers with it. If you can imagine the service, and if you want to do it, there's always a way to achieve it using low code. And so, I think it's really going to be a big thing in the future. I think we're at the beginning of a bit of a journey here, and I think low code is only going to become, a bigger and bigger industry as it goes on, as it develops.
Thanks, Kev. Craig.
I'd like to sort of pay forward the kindness that Jan showed us at the start of our journey, and say to anybody that's at the beginning of their journey that the community is very strong within the Netcall product, and the basic message is that if we can do it, anybody can do it, and with limited resources.
Excellent, thanks, Craig. Jan.
Mine is very short. I don't know what we would do without low code now, and if we had to take it away tomorrow, I don't know how we'd run our services. It really has transformed how quickly and how well we can serve our customers.
Excellent, thanks, Jan. Beat that, Mike.
Well, I would say, in 2 words, do it. And if the council is looking for, your council is looking for another platform, the business case writes itself in terms of the efficiencies and what you can replace from the other big suppliers, and how you can be more responsive and adaptive to customer needs. It's really easy to sell on paper, and it's easy to sell to management, and it's easy to sell to members.
Excellent, thanks, Mike. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you all for your time and your insight and your knowledge. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honour to have the opportunity to interview you all. I'm actually going to use, I don't usually like Teams, but I'm going to give you a little round of applause, which has popped up there. Bit of functionality. I think I'm going to might even try and do it again, to be honest. But yes, I'd like to thank you on behalf of all of our attendees for getting involved and sharing your experience. I'd like to thank you, the attendees, for attending, obviously.